Welcome to this Apex Racing League GT mid-season review podcast presented by Apex Racing TV. My name is Sam Fitzpatrick, and alongside me is Adam Hedgecock. We've been covering the series for the first 4 rounds of the championship, and we'll be covering what has happened over those first 4 races of the championship, and also looking forward to the second half of the season as well. Adam, it's been great fun. So it was last season as well, but it's nice to see the championship kind of grow in size. We started off last season with approximately 30 drivers. We had over 40 drivers at the start of this season. I've had good numbers throughout as well. It's just nice as well to get to know these drivers over time as well. I always think it's something missing whenever we do commentaries in the past. They're kind of just names on a screen often for us to commentate on, but it's nice to kind of get to know them on a more personal level and see how they evolve as the races go by.
It's certainly been nice to see familiar names coming back season after season. For me, I started in the American GT and got to meet some of the drivers there. And of course, they've now moved to this league. This was the spiritual successor of that. And some of them stuck out for season 1 and they're back for season 2. So we're getting to see some people on a regular. And it's like you say, it's really nice to be able to kind of learn about those drivers and almost evolve with them over the course of their season, see their confidence kind of go from strength to strength, maybe have a bit of a bad season and then come back and look even stronger. It's really good to see, and I have to admit it's been I dare say a privilege to experience some of the things that we have, because at times it's been absolutely breathtaking.
It really has. So today we're going to go through a slightly different format to any of these podcasts that you've seen previously. I know me and Mark have done a couple of UOV8 season reviews before, where we kind of just muddle our way through it, maybe go round by round as the championship goes on. What we're going to do is kind of going to do a Ted's notebook type style thing. So I'll go through team by team, focus in on each of the drivers. And it should mean that all the drivers get a little bit more coverage, and we should remember a few more things as well. And the first team we're going to talk about is EvoSR, precisely the EvoSR name team, not EvoSR Green. We'll move on to them in a bit. But EvoSR, just that team with McMahon, Salt, and Powell at the helm. The reason why we're doing that, they're not necessarily leaders of the team's championship, although have been the highest scores at 2 of the 4 meetings so far this season, are currently in a very close second place in the team's championship. But the reason why we're talking about them first is because Tom McMahon is at the moment the championship leader, and that's kind of been made by his race ones so far, Adam. 4 out of 4, something that is something that we really couldn't have expected so far this season. He's also got 5 out of his previous 5 if you go back to Spa last season as well. I mean, that is pretty phenomenal, just that consistency in those race ones, and that's how he's been able to build this lead at the moment.
It's I think this is something that's been born out of frustration from last season. He had a pretty rough ride, didn't he? At one point he was saying he was considering not doing it anymore. He just wasn't enjoying it, and then he switched car. He drove the Ford, I think, for the last couple of races.
Yeah.
And he just seemed to come alive again, didn't he? And we spoke to him, and he said it was like a breath of fresh air. It was enjoyable again. And I think coming into this season, he's just tried to, or what it seems like, just tried to capture that whole I want to have fun mentality, and he's just taken no prisoners with it. He's enjoying it. Even when even in race 1 of Barcelona, when Taj Edwards took pole position for that, McMahon was right on him right from the get-go, wasn't he? And he was past him in no time, and then just dominated. And it's the same story for every single race 1 so far. Like you say, he's been a force to be reckoned with in those race 1s, and it's hard to see anyone stopping him in race 1s going forward, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, Silverstone and Lamont, he was pushed pretty hard, but Barcelona and Phillip Island absolutely crushed him, particularly Barcelona. That meeting, he was insane, man. Won race 1 by about 8 seconds, then proceeded to win race 2 by 7 or 8 seconds. Remember drivers in warm up just saying how insanely quick he was on there. No one could put their finger on why he was quite so quick. So he managed to do the double there, which was his first double since British GT, according to him. But against a much more competitive field, it should be added for this GTE championship. He did have the non-score at Silverstone, and he's currently got a pretty marginal lead. And in terms of drop scores, he's doing even better than he is total. So total, he's got 389. That's 18 points clear of Vice-Kopska in second place. But with drop scores, he's positioned even better. I'm just wondering if his attitude will change at all in the second half of the season. We know he's a pretty cautious driver. He comes across as quite an experienced driver, does Tom. And just securing those top 5s is going to be the main thing for him now for the end of the season. If he can keep up this race 1 form, then he's going to be difficult to beat. As long as he doesn't retire from a race, I mean, it's difficult to see anyone kind of catching up to his pace and then surpassing it again.
I think he's going to be safe for the race 1s. I don't think we're going to see anything change there. Race 2s, it has been a little bit of a mixed bag. Other than the double that he did at Barcelona, he's had a few little incidents, hasn't he? We saw him at Lamont have a couple of incidents. One where he dropped it on his own, which was very surprising. So I think if he can iron those out, the race 2s, and just concentrate on those top 5 finishes, I think he's going to be good for the rest of the season. But you never know, do you? Just one incident and another no score, and it puts the cat right amongst the pigeons again.
Absolutely. And Phillip Island as well, because he had that off, didn't he? Which, thankfully for him, it meant that he didn't lose any points to Vice-Kopska, who made a mistake himself. But that could have been pretty costly. So yeah, there are fragilities. What's the word for fragile? Fragilities? That sounds like that should be a word.
We'll go with it being a word, even if it's not a word. It is now a word.
It's a great word. So he has got his fragilities, but he is still the favourite for the championship. I think safe to say has been the highest point scorer at the last 3 rounds. The only one that he wasn't the highest scorer was Silverstone when he had a non-finish. So he's certainly the man to beat. Someone who also had a very poor Silverstone round, but has bounced back, is James Salt. His results have actually been he's very much gone under the radar. But he had 2 no scores in Silverstone. He then had a 10th and a 4th at Barcelona, a 7th and a 3rd at Phillip Island, and an 8th and a 3rd at Lamont. So extremely consistent, really good in the race 2s. I kind of want to make a little bit of a spreadsheet actually, to see who's done the best in the race 2s, because Salt might be up there in terms of the best in the race 2s. And part of that, to be fair, is his kind of lower top 10 finishes in race 1s, which put him in a slightly better shape for race 2. But Salt's been able to get his head down and bounce back from that Silverstone round, and he's been really good since then. With the drop score, you could argue that he's still in the championship hunt. He's actually 3rd place when you consider the drop score.
He's almost the perfect runner to go with McMahon, isn't it? Really, in that team, where I think it's fair to say, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way towards James, but he's not as quick as Tom is. That we know that's pretty clear to see. But what he does do is pull in the results when they're needed. Sure, he's finishing consistently, but 10th, 7th, and 8th in the 3 race 1 races that he's finished, and then 4th, 3rd, and 3rd in the race 2s. So he's consistent, and he's pulling in those points for the team when Tom's not necessarily at the front getting the main haul, which is what you want from any teammate, really, isn't it? I mean, I'd love a teammate like that. I'm sorry to any of my teammates that might be listening to this. There's nothing against them, but I think it's what any team dream of, isn't it? The consistent guy who can put in those results, get the points, bank them, and then let the quicker guys just go about it and just fight and scrap for the main points. But yeah, since that he's since that Silverstone, as you said, I think he's He's been doing a very, very solid job and should be very proud of what he's achieving, to be fair.
Yeah, and still, like I said, a potentially a championship contender when you consider that drop down. But once again, a little bit like McMoney, cannot afford another non-scorer. Otherwise that's really going to affect him in the championship. Final driver in that team is Aaron Powell, who has I've only just noticed this, but one of the most fantastic run of results. So he's had 3/15ths and 3/5ths along with the 21st and the 23rd, which is absolutely superb. By the way, I've got a little bit of a calm. I'm so pleased with these points, honestly. Cannot believe how proud I am of them. But the most amount of same results across the season is McMahon because he's won 5 races. So, and then Vicekopska's got 3 seconds. But the fact that Powell has got 3/5ths and 3/15ths is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that is consistency beyond belief. Anyway, he's I don't really know what I expected from Powell this season. He was a solid driver last season. I think may have got 3rd place in the championship. I think he was battling with Eichenberg. May have to load up those points from last season in just a moment. But we haven't seen him really too prominent for these race wins so far. He's had a couple of good race ones, a couple of 5th places in race ones, but those race twos just haven't quite come to Powell yet this season. But I can only hope in these 4 remaining race twos that he will be at the front because he's certainly a driver who could nick a race win if he really puts his mind to it.
I think you're right. I don't think it would be a race 1 win. I think it's the qualifying that he struggles with, which puts him in a position where typical midfield scenario, isn't it? Gets very congested. Little bit of contact here and there, and all of a sudden it puts pay to your race, and you've not really done anything. I think if he could improve his qualifying to get out of that situation, that'd be a good start. That would certainly up his race 1s, but race 2, I think you're absolutely on the money there. Little bit of luck and a good run, and he could easily take a race win. But yeah, I didn't realise that he'd finished 5th 3 times. I knew he was sort of knocking on the door for podiums, but yeah, 3 5th places. That's still a solid effort, all things considered.
And last season he finished in 3rd place in the championship. He beat Broomfield. They had a wheel-to-wheel battle against Broomfield at Lamont race 2 last season, and that clinched him 3rd place in the championship and top of the EvoSR, just only behind Andre and Eichenberg. So it doesn't look like he's going to be able to repeat that success, Powell, but he could be very useful in EvoSR's quest for the team's championship. Yeah, of course, yeah, it's probably going to be EvoSR versus Gold Racing Team for that team's championship. Any do you think one of them has the advantage over the other? I mean, ever since Sourcing, it seems like EvoSR maybe have had the advantage, but then Gold Racing Team was so strong last season as well, and have got a good strong team. Would you favour either of those teams in the remaining 4 rounds?
It's a tough one. We know that there is race-winning capabilities with Taj Edwards and Make Visa Kopsika. We know that they can really put it to McMahon, but he's irresistible at the moment, and I just can't see past him picking up more wins. And if he continues to pick up wins, I think that puts EvoSR in the box seat. I think that gives them the advantage. If he has a downturn in form, or if he picks up another no score, then it could be a different story. But yeah, at the moment I'm thinking it's just edging towards EvoSR.
So next up, talking about Gold Racing Team Porsche, because they are the championship leaders at the moment in the team's championship by 3 points. It's pretty close anyway. Make Visa Kopsika so far this season been absolutely brilliant. Second place in the championship, yet to win a race, however, Adam. His results have been incredibly consistent. He so far had a fifth, a fourth, a second, a third, a 10th. And then last time out at Le Mans, he had 2 second places. So 4 podiums. He's the only driver on the grid who has scored 8 top 10s. He's got a top 10 100% record so far this season. And so he's on a huge amount of points at the moment. Can we say he's maximised this season so far? Or do you think there's been a little bit left that he could have picked up on?
That's a really tough one, I think. We've seen how quick he can be, and we've seen him make moves where he really needed to get a podium place, or whether it was a pass for second or whatever it might have been. Unfortunately for him, he just hasn't quite got that ultimate pace of McMahon. But I would argue that he's possibly more consistent than McMahon. Whenever we see him, he's always there or thereabouts. As we see, like the last 5 races, he's got 4 podiums, which is stellar. He's had 3 second places. I just think he's found McMahon in a season where McMahon is just on form, and everything is going his way. I kind of feel a little bit bad for Visa Kopsika in that fact that he's driving really, really well. It's just not quite good enough, which is balmy to think about it, because I would love to have results like he's got. I'm sure you would too, Sam. But yeah, for whatever reason, it's just not quite good enough, which is a real shame for him.
Definitely. I of course, as everyone knows, I did win a championship once.
Oh, really?
Like to bring that up. Yeah. Did you not hear? I remember being in that championship against guys who were far better than myself, the likes of Nicole Foggy and Dwayne Brown, Josh Thompson. And I remember in that championship, because my goal was just to finish every single race, because there was no drop scores, I think. What was there, drop scores? No, there was 2 drop scores, sorry, but I'd already retired from 2 races quite early on in the season, so I knew I couldn't afford to retire from another race. And what I kept on having to tell myself was that the others will retire. The others will retire, and as long as you just keep finishing in a decent result, then eventually they'll fall back into your clutches and you'll be able to overtake them. But when your opponent is on top form, as McMahon is at the moment, it's very difficult to convince yourself that that's going to happen. But I think you've just got to have faith that it will happen, because that's how you kind of maximize the points. And Visa Kopsika has been able to put some brilliant results so far this season. I mean, Silverstone, I barely remember him being on circuit, and yet he finished in 5th and 4th. Barcelona, don't remember in race 1, 4th, superb second place as well in that race. I think he started pretty far back, I think like 12th place or something. So to get back up to second was very good. Phillip Island was arguably his worst round, despite being pretty quick in race 1, because he made a mistake in race 2, and then Le Mans he was extremely impressive. Went from 6th to 2nd on the first couple of corners at Le Mans. So he's done he's got almost the most amount of points that I think he could have done. He's just got to hope that McMahon has an issue at some point during the season, and it might open up for him. In 3rd place out of the overall points, he did get a penalty, did Edwards, after Le Mans, which has dropped him behind Salt when you take into consideration the drop score. But Edwards is 3rd place when it comes to the ovals, and of course getting his first race win of the season as well in race 2 at Le Mans. It's difficult to say whether Edwards is still in this championship, because he's had a couple of tricky rounds. Silverstone race 2, Silverstone, he was arguably the fastest driver that meeting, but got done by McMahon first lap race 1, and then had a hardware issue, I think, in race 2, and he's had a couple of 11th places as well at Phillip Island and Le Mans, when things could have got a lot better for him. But I guess that win at Le Mans, it gives him a crumb of comfort, but he needs to start gaining points on McMahon and Visa Kopsika base, and start taking some of these race 1s off McMahon as well.
I don't want to be too critical of Taj. We've spoken to him a couple of times recently, and I really feel his mentality is the right one. You just go out there, just try and do your best. If it works out for you, it works out. If it doesn't, you just try harder next time. But you go out there with a smile on your face and a bit of determination, and you see what happens. You just go out there and try not to leave anything out on the track come the end of the race. And if we looked at him last season, he was, when there were points to be picked up, he was there, wasn't he? He was the guy, maybe not one of the guys that could challenge on a regular, but you knew that he would always be there, hoovering up those points if there was incidents or if somebody wasn't quite at home on a particular track, he would be there. And we're kind of seeing flashes of that again this season with him. And it's, again, I think it's a season of maybe missed opportunities for him, possibly, where, he's had a couple of issues and not been able to kind of bounce back from them straight away. Although Lamont, 11th in race 1 and then come back to win race 2. I don't know. Taj will always be there. I don't think he's going to really push Wiese-Kopsika or McMahon come the end of the season. But that said, it wouldn't surprise me if he does, which is a big contradiction. But it's one of those things where I think it looks worse than what it is on paper, if that makes sense. Of course, I'm looking at the spreadsheet, and the listeners haven't got a clue what I'm looking at. But yeah, I think it looks that the numbers on the spreadsheet make him look worse than what he's actually doing. But I don't think he's quite doing enough to trouble those in front at this moment in time. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, open up the spreadsheet if you're a driver. You got access to it. It's on the points, and you can see all the results of the drivers so far this season, along with their penalty points as well. I think a good element in the second half of the season is going to be whether or not the teammates support the best chance of winning the championship drivers. So McMahon and Salt. So basically, McMahon and Wiese-Kopsika are really even on points. But then Edwards and Salt are even on points. And at Le Mans, we saw the starting of what could be the case later on in the season, where Salt offered to let McMahon pass in order to give McMahon an extra 3 points, I believe it would be, in the championship. And Edwards could have slowed down and let Wiese-Kopsika go, and that would have been 8 points in the championship, which would be huge. If in Watkins Glen race 2, Adam, we've got Edwards leading the way with Wiese-Kopsika 2 seconds behind him. Edwards deserves to be leading out. He's had the pace of Wiese-Kopsika. It doesn't look like Maker's going to get past. Do you think they'll swap positions in order to give Wiese-Kopsika those 8 points? Or at what point do you think they will start doing that? Or do you think they'll never do that?
I think it will be offered, but I think all of those drivers that you've mentioned have solid integrity about them. So they will offer it, but it will always be denied. You know what I mean?
Even if it's Suzuka race 2 and Wiese-Kopsika needs the points, do you not think they'll swap?
If Edwards is out of contention, then yes, I think they will do that. Although it would be reluctantly. I think they would help each other out. I'll say this out straight. I think all of the drivers in those top 2 teams will do anything to help each other out. But they will also say, well, look, no, you've got the place. You stay ahead. It's fine. I don't want to get points that way. They have that integrity about them. But I think come the crunch end, maybe, if like in this situation, Edwards might not be in contention. Will he let Wiese-Kopsika through? He'll probably offer it. Wiese-Kopsika will say, well, maybe if you don't mind, it's up to you. And it might happen, but I don't think it will be a Ferrari Formula One style, Wiese-Kopsika's faster than you situation. I think there's a lot more integrity around it than that.
Yeah, most likely. Third driver in that team is Jeffrey Garzotto, who can't remember what happened to Garzotto at Phillip Island, actually. But he's got no scores anyway, and then he didn't take part in Lamont, unfortunately. But I have been told that I think he will be back for the final 4 rounds of the championship. Shame for Garzotto, because he started out the season with a 9th, an 11th, and a 7th, which would have probably put him up in the top 5 in the championship. But he slipped down to 20, outside the top 20 now for Garzotto because of those 2 missing rounds. It's kind of difficult to judge Garzotto because we know that he's a good driver. Just seems to have fallen off the back of Kopska and Edwards, and that seems to have happened to Broomfield as well, who we'll talk about a little bit more later on as well. But the Gold Racing Team drivers were so evenly matched last season. I think at the start of last season, especially, Garzotto was right on a par with Kopska. Just seems to have fallen away a little bit now, but at the same time, we've only got 2 races to judge him by, and if he does turn up for the last 4 rounds of the championship, you'd be another guy who you'd probably put money on to at least get a podium at some point.
I'm actually kind of proud of what Garzotto's been doing. The first time I came across him was in a VLN race. I was watching my team, do their thing, and because I have the SDK event viewer, I kept seeing there was crashes, and poor old Jeffrey Garzotto was coming up in red. It seemed every lap. He was struggling, and he just couldn't get a handle on the car around the Nordschleife. And I laugh about it. It's an incredibly difficult track, and if you're not feeling it, or if your car's not quite there, it's very easy to have mistakes. And I thought, poor lad, he's really struggling. And then, of course, I come and do the commentary with you in the GT League, and there is Jeffrey Garzotto. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord, let's hope he can drive better in this than he can at the Nordschleife. And lo and behold, he was a revelation in my eyes. He was willing to get stuck in. I think last season his results weren't as good as they possibly could have been. But he was giving it a go. He was getting stuck in, which was brilliant. And then this season, the first couple of rounds, two ninth places in Silverstone, and then an 11th and a 7th at Barcelona. That's real progress, I feel. In my eyes, from what I first saw of him to then, it's a shame we haven't seen him at Phillip Island and Le Mans. But as you say, he's due to be back for the next 4 races. So I'm actually excited to see how much he's got left in the tank. How much further he can go. At this moment in time, is he as quick as the other guys in the team? I don't think so. Has he got the potential to be? Quite possibly, yeah.
That is certainly, I think the only team who you can argue is stronger than them is EvoSR. And just looking at their results, they were second highest scorers in Silverstone and Barcelona. They were the third highest scorers at Phillip Island, and they were the top scorers by 4 points at Le Mans. That was only with 2 drivers, of course. By the way, the way the point system works, I'm sure the drivers would know, because they, of course, analyze the rules document. Always read the rules document, so we'll undoubtedly know this, but I'll say it anyway. The top 2 drivers for each meeting score points for them. So with a 3-pronged attack, a bit like a cake fork, I'm sure they'll be very strong. Will Gold Racing Team Porsche to the end of the season.
I want cake now.
Oh, you got your ice cream, don't you?
I do, but that's not till later. You have to. Cake.
So 4th place in the championship is currently Indy Autosport White, a team, Adam, which I think probably the most improved team, I'd say, from last season to this season. Had was it Derek and Holland last season, I believe, were their drivers. But they brought in a couple of new recruits, and they have done extremely well. So in the white team, running Daniel Sabo. Apparently we weren't saying that correct, but I believe it's Sabo. Must be Sabo. Daniel, let us know. Yeah. Jensen Adriansons and Max Wolf in that team. So all debutants. at the moment, and they have been the third highest scorers in 3 out of 4 rounds. In fact, so far this season, they've had a 146, a 104, a 112, and a 135. So really good consistency for those guys so far this season. And currently, Max Wolf lines up in 4th place in the championship as well. Admittedly, a couple of places lower when you take into consideration the in the drop score. In fact, no, it's still 4th place actually when you consider the drop score. So yeah, Wolf's been really good so far this season. It's been nice to see these new recruits because they've jumped in, and considering that it usually takes a bit of time to get used to a championship, they've been able to straight away get in 6th gear.
They have. We've seen flashes of brilliance from Sivi Sabo. I can't remember where it was. He pulled a move. I think it might have been Silverstone. Don't quote me on that. But
was it at the outside of club?
It could well have been, yes. Yeah, was it the one with
Holman?
Oh, it might
I'm
have
not sure.
been. It might have
I think
been.
he went round the outside of someone at club and got the inside for Vale, I think.
Yes.
That may have been Sivi Sabo. I'm not sure. But if that's the move you're thinking of, I was very impressed by that as well.
Yeah, I think is that one. So we've seen flashes from him, which has been brilliant. Wolf has been mightily impressive, albeit I think from personal kind of feeling is that maybe he's a little bit too aggressive with some of the moves sometimes. He just kind of he'll put the car in a position and say, right, what are you going to do? Are you going to let me through, or are we going to have an incident? You know, well, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it's he's really kind of trying to stamp a bit of authority, let the rest of the racers who have been around a while let everyone know that he's here to race and race hard, which is again has shown some brilliant flashes again. So those two have really hit the ground running. For Adrian's, unfortunately, the first race that he participated in, I think he barely made it to the start line, did he? He ended up on the inside wall at Silverstone. But again, you know, solid when he's been on the broadcast, when we've covered him, he's looked good out there. He's been quick. He's willing to get stuck in, which is, you know, all you can ask for, really. The only thing that annoys me with the team, and I say this,
I think I know what you're going to say here.
I say this totally unreserved. Sort your paints out, boys, because you're all in different cars and you're not in white cars. Adrianson's running an orange car. Wolf is running a white car with some blue chrome on it. I think Sivi Sabo's running the same, but I don't think they're all the same paints. Reminder, by the way, upload your paints to the drive so we can get them for the broadcasts. There are links in the useful link part of the Discord. Get them uploaded so we can use them. I loved the Indy Autosport car last season with I think it was Kittelman and Holland, I think, wasn't it, that were in it last season? They had the red with the rather nice white. They were in the white car with the nice red stripe on it that I loved. And yeah, I was hoping for more of the same this season, but alas, the boys let me down.
That has, I think Indy Autosport, they might be running that, but the white car, yeah, they're certainly running all sorts of different liveries. On your point about Wolf's aggressiveness, he did make some big moves, didn't he, at Silverstone, which did get him a 3rd place in only his 2nd race. I think he was 2nd place in the championship, exiting that round. Had a really quite a rubbish Phillip Island round where he just wasn't particularly quick, but lots of drivers struggled in that round. Adrianson's, he's currently, where is he in the championship standings? And he is 4th place in the championship. Quite a bit behind Stevens. We've got Stevens, then Kittelman, actually, then Copeland and Adrianson's, then Saul, who was leading with Saul, but a penalty for him really destroyed his championship for the time being. But Adrianson's was leading at Barcelona as well. He could still come back, but he needs to kind of get rid of these mistakes at the moment in order to challenge those guys ahead. Also, Adjinson's, I think, less than 2 KI rating. I think Wolf going into the season was less than 2 KI rating as well, which is absolutely insane how that was the case. They have really overperformed, and Civi Sapper as well, I think, had to be promoted from a amateur driver to a pro. But really nice to see those guys around the championship. In the other Indy Autosports car, they're currently 8th in the championship. With a couple of more familiar names in that team, Kittelman, Holland, and Becker. A little bit of a downside though for them this season, because Andrew Becker has announced his withdrawal from the championship, which is a bit of a shame. I'm just going on Discord now to find what was his explanation.
Oh, he was moving back to the States, wasn't he? I think he was somewhere in Europe at the moment, and
Italy,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the travel ban has been lifted, so he can go home. So a massive silver lining to that. It is a shame that we don't get to see him for the rest of the season, though.
He did send me a PM though, and he just said he wanted everyone to hear this, and he said, I've decided to withdraw from the series. I apologize to the team. I just cannot deal with the Boris Becker puns and comparisons this season. I'm going to have to pull out of the championship, which is a massive shame. It is a massive shame that that Drew has had to do that, because yeah, what can I say? I enjoyed the Boris Becker puns. But we've got a nice compilation now of them. I don't think they'll stop us making a few puns, but that is going to hurt them for the rest of the season, unfortunately. Indy Autosports, because Kittelman and Holland back with the old team, I guess, with those two representing those guys. Where are they in the championship currently? Those two, Holland and Kittelman, actually up in 15th place in the championship. He's got a good run in these last 4 races of some more consistent finishes: a 16th, a 13th, a 12th, and 11th. And it was probably his most impressive round ever, I think, last time out at Lamont, where he managed to finish top of the amateur drivers in race 2. I mean, Kittelman's a driver who struggled to get into the top 20 at most rounds last season and this season, but so he does seem to improve that, and I guess he just felt particularly confident round Le Mans. It is a specialist circuit, it is a very unique circuit, but he was having a real good time around there.
I loved watching him there. For me, he was probably my driver of the week, simply because he just, everything that I thought I knew about Kittelman and Holland, he just screwed it up in a ball, threw it to the side, and said, hold my beer. Here's something else to consider, and he drove brilliantly. And I'll say this again. I don't mean anything bad towards the guys, but when I look at Holland and Kittelman from last season coming into this season, I thought they were drivers that they will scrap hard for the lower end of the points. They'll come, they'll give it their all, they'll do what they can, they'll pick up points where they can. They're here to have a good time and enjoy themselves. When we watch them on track, it's good fun watching them. Again, like I've said for others, they enjoy getting stuck in. They enjoy kind of scrapping, even though it is for those lower end of the points. They give it a good shot anyway. But Kittelman this past week, wow, just wow. I can't remember whether it was race 1 or 2, but he was fending off some of the front runners.
I think it was race 2.
I think
because he was starting right at the front, wasn't he? He was starting like in 2nd or 3rd, I think.
That's right, yeah. And even when they got past, he was then making moves to get back at them. It was brilliant to watch, and it was such a refreshing change to see just that team at the sharp end and being right up there. We never really gave them much airtime last season, did we? Like we'd have a look back every so often, and we'd see them. We'd make a lovely comment about their car because it was beautiful to look at, but we didn't really go to them because there was great battling to be commentated on. But this week, well, long may it continue. Yeah, Kittleman was brilliant, and again, my driver of the week.
Yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. Fortunately, Holland missed Lamont. You kind of think what could have been for Holland in that round, but certainly on my screen, he didn't take part in that round. So a 29th, a 27th, 30th, 22nd, and 19th one, currently 32nd in the championship. Hope to see a bit more of him later on in the season, but no, Indy Autosports team will certainly improved this season. Third place in the championship after round 4 are Gold Racing Team BMW. So we'll talk about them. They're a bit adrift at the moment, about 150 points off GRT Porsche and EvoSR, but in a narrow third place at the moment over the 4th and 5th place teams. Leading that squad in the championship, I believe it's Stephen Bloomfield. Is it Stephen Bloomfield? I'm just going to have to check this one. They've got Bloomfield, Eichenberg going. In fact, we'll first talk about Dennis Eichenberg, because it's a massive shame, and hopefully Dennis is listening along. Once again, get well soon, because he started the season so strong at Silverstone, and this was really the peak as well of Gold Racing Team. I think, at least in this championship. I think at Silverstone, I think that was something like their 5th or 6th consecutive highest point score for a team. Gold Racing Team, I think, were the highest point scores for the final 5 rounds of last season. And then you add Silverstone into the mix as well for this season. They were really very, very tricky to beat. Yeah, there were the high scores at round 4, 5, 7, and 8 last season, then round 1 as well this season. So it was extremely strong. Were Gold Racing Team. Unfortunately, though, he's had to pull out of the championship, has Eichenberg, after Barcelona, back when he was running up in the top 3 in the championship, and that's left Bloomfield and Gordon to be alongside, but very much a what if for Eichenberg, because like I said, he was very strong after Silverstone.
He came away leading the championship at Silverstone, didn't he? A 3rd place and a 1st place. Yeah, he looked incredibly strong. Looked in great form. Not so much at Barcelona. I think he said that he wasn't particularly good there. And after that, yeah, it's a shame that he's had to step aside. So get well soon, Dennis. Can't wait to see him back racing, because yeah, he really was at his peak, wasn't he, at Silverstone, as you said. Yeah, it's just left Broomfield and Gordon to kind of struggle on, and just the two of them for the rest of the season, which is a real shame.
It's going to be tricky for them to hold on to 3rd place in the championship, but I'll certainly try. Now that we're halfway through the season, I don't believe I should know this, but I don't think they can make any team changes from now on in the championship. They can't add any members, so that it will just be the 2 of them. To be fair, they're both stuck with the series, have the 2 of them, so that they'll still have a chance. Bloomfield's had quite an intermittent season. He's actually finished every round, to be fair. So he got an 11th place at Silverstone race 1. Then he got a 2nd place in race 2. They had a disappointing Barcelona, 30th and 17th. Then I think he had a really poor qualifying that round. He had a poor qualifying as well. Phillip, I think he qualified near 20th place, but then managed to recover with a 12th and then a 5th in race 2, where he defended brilliantly. I think he was racing with Max Wolf. No, James Holman, sorry, he was battling with for race 2. Really nice battle there. And then Lamont, very much what could have been, actually, because he qualified high up, but then he finished 13th in race 1, then started high up again in race 2, and he made a mistake when running in 3rd place. So there's plenty on the table for Bloomfield. I think I will give him a lot of credit for that Phillip Island race 2 round, where he defended extremely well, despite not being necessarily the fastest driver out there. But apart from that, he's just struggled to match his form from last season.
One of the things that I took out of last season was the unbelievable consistency of Broomfield. It didn't matter what you threw at him, he just seemed to put the car in the right place, brake at the right point, turn in at the right point, get good drive, and he was just immovable. You'd have to really work to get round him. It was brilliant to watch, and I had again high hopes for him coming into this season because of how solid he was last time out. But this season, there's lots of little mistakes that have come in, hasn't there? It's I think I've said it in commentary a few times. It's kind of weird seeing it because I'm just not expecting it. Lamont, the prime example, you just said it. The first race qualified well, and then cut the first chicane and got a massive slowdown on lap 1, outbroke himself. And then race 2, I can't remember the exact mistake, but yeah, another mistake in race 2 to drop him down again after starting high up. Still decent points, don't get me wrong. A 13th and an 8th is still good quality racing and good points, but it's just not the same consistency as what I'm used to, and it's I don't know whether there's a little setup change, whether the car's changed slightly, or whether he's just trying to push on a little bit more and try and challenge right at the sharp end. But whatever it is, it's not quite working out for him at the moment.
He's still he's 8th in the championship at the moment. Yeah, 8th. That makes sense. In terms of overall scores, and then he's about the same place as well when you take into account the job scores, maybe a couple of places higher is Broomfield. So I think it's been actually better than what it looks like. But yeah, it's certainly a driver who has I'm sure will hopefully improve in the second half of the season. Finally, in that team, we've got John Gordon. Another Joe who's driven a little bit under the radar. A 20th, a 10th, a 25th, 15th, and then he didn't score any points at Phillip Island. And then a 6th, which was his best result of the season, in race 1 at Lamont. And then a no score as well in race 2. So yeah, 2 top 10 so far for Gordon, currently just sitting outside the top 20 in the championship. And I imagine maybe his main focus will now be just on the team championship, making sure that they secure that 3rd place in the season. But promising signs for Gordon, as for a couple of the Gold Racing team just there at Le Mans. We know it's a circuit that they go well around, and that race 1 at Le Mans for Gordon was much more impressive.
It was. And we don't often see him too much on the broadcast, do we? We do flick to him every so often, but I kind of feel that he's one of those drivers that if the wind's blowing in the right direction and all the planets aligned, he can have an absolutely stonking race. He can really get involved and knock on the door of the top 5. But I just feel that sometimes it just doesn't work out for him. He gets involved in some bits and pieces. It ends up having some big battles, sort of in the midfield. And it just means that as and when he does get the job done, if he can get the job done, the gap to the guys in front is then too large, and he has so much work to then do in such a small amount of time. That said, with the reverse grids, he certainly shows that he can hold his own. When the front runners do come through, he does make it hard work for them, but inevitably he doesn't quite have enough to hold them off. And again, if things are going his way, then we can see that a 10th and a 15th is still a good result. For reverse grid, it's still a great result. So I think he's one of those drivers that's just kind of right on the, maybe not, he's not in the top kind of echelon of runners, but I think he's one of those that can definitely start knocking on the door of the group just behind them. I'm quietly confident that we can see a good second half of the season from him.
course, they're running the BMW compared to the Porsche. You've been practicing for Lamont in the past week. So, any idea which is faster? As far as I believe, at least Mike Lauder was saying how the Ford was joking about that. Although I've seen the Ford go decently elsewhere. The BMW used to be the car to go to, but it seems to have dropped in popularity. Is the Porsche, you'd say, the car to go for?
I think it's the best all round. The BMW was the go-to car because even though it was kind of big and heavy, it had great pull out of the corners. It was easy to drive. It didn't want to swap ends on you. You could push it quite hard before it would then start biting back. Whereas the Porsche, up until the most recent change, was very much on the edge. You could run it hard, but you'd have to be pretty careful with it. Now they've kind of switched around. The Porsche is probably the easiest to drive. You can trim off a lot of the wing quite a lot for places like Le Mans, where it can be frighteningly quick, matching the pace of the Ferrari down the straights, but it can still hold on to the rear end through the Porsche curves. So I can definitely, from my point of view, that the Porsche is, if you're not comfortable enough with a really loose rear end of the Ferrari, the Porsche is definitely the car to go for.
Next up, EvoSR Green, who are sitting in 5th place in the championship, but are very close to Gold Racing Team, BMW, and Indy Autosport. White, their top scoring driver so far this season, I believe, has been Bob Humphrey. I'm just going to check that one, but I'm pretty sure it is the case. Yeah, Humphrey currently top of the of their scorers. Humphrey just seems to have progressed more and more, hasn't he? I mean, the start of last season, he wasn't necessarily the fastest of the amateur drivers, and now he's managed to go from the fastest of the amateur drivers, and he's really established himself as one of the top of the pro drivers as well. And it's all kind of based on that consistency. So he's currently sixth, not even 6th place in the championship. He's 5th place in the championship at the moment. Is Humphrey. Quite a bit lower down with the drop scores just because he's been so consistent so far this season. Did have a no score at Le Mans race 1. But apart from that, it's been all top 13 so far this season for him. So, no, Humphrey just continues his upwards trajectory.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? We spoke to him either at the end of last season or at the beginning of this season, I forget which, and he said he was very apprehensive of moving up to the pros, but he's held his own, hasn't he? He's driving really well. Of course, winning the mad race too at Phillip Island, where every man and his dog wanted to fall off the track at turn 2. Yeah, he dominated that, and it's good to see. Bob is kind of understated really how quick he is. I remember jumping into a practice session at Spa last season. We had an off week, and I thought, you know what, I enjoy Spa. Let's go and throw a car around and see how quick these guys really are. And I was behind him, maybe 2 seconds, something like that, behind him. I thought, right, if I can just keep Bob sort of that 2 seconds, then that'll make me happy, you know. And it worked that way for a couple of laps, and then it was like he kind of looked in his mirror and said, right, that's enough, Hedge. We've had enough of you pondering around. Let's see how quickly you can really go. And he just disappeared into the distance. He just went, and it was unbelievable the pace that he had. So yeah, I think he was always going to do well in the pros. But top 13 across the board, apart from the one no score, like you say, is pretty good going for Bob so far.
And then he proceeded to gain, I think, 22 places in race 2 as well at Le Mans. Although we didn't see him a whole, it was a bit of a Carlos Sainz driver, so I don't think we ever really showed him on camera, but he did genuinely gain all those places. And of course, he was leading as well at Barcelona race 2 as well before Lee made his contact. Perhaps a podium on offer for Humphrey on that occasion as well. So he will certainly be useful for that EvoSR Green team. Surprising that they're not further up. really thought they'd be kind of in no man's land in third place in the championship. I think they are probably favourites for third place in the championship, considering what they've done so far this season. Because Matty Chambers has also been great, debutant as well. But he managed to finish fourth in his first race of the season at Silverstone. He's also got a second place at Phillip Island. He nearly got pole as well at Phillip Island. You think he could have certainly won race one at Phillip Island as well if he had been able to nick that pole off his teammate Tom McMahon. However, outside of that, only one other top 10, just lacking that consistency at the moment is Matty Chambers. I don't think it's something inherent about his driving, Adam, but it's just one of these things where it usually takes 2 or 3 seasons to kind of gain that subconscious avoidance of incidents. And I think Chambers just needs to learn that at the moment. I'm sure he'll be much more consistent in the second half of the season.
I think you're right. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Damien Owen Harris. Remember last season he was here and he had some great races. Was very quick, but it's almost like he was willing to roll the dice on every move. And he soon learned that didn't pay well. And I think Matty Chambers he's experienced that to some extent, where he drives in a different style to how the rest of the field drive here. And it took him a couple of races to kind of really get in tune with that and figure out that risk doesn't always equal reward. He's been solid. I think that the problem with the team as the whole, and I use the term problem loosely, is that they're not quite consistent enough. There's a bigger gap between their good results and their bad results than the guys ahead of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just looking at Tom Stevens' results as well, kind of backs up that point. Stevens up in 9th place in the championship, which is really good. He was pretty good last season. I think he finished 3rd place out of the AMS, but certainly nowhere near as high as he was as he is at the moment. Couple a 27th start of the season, then a couple of 14th, a 35th, and then a 10th, a 4th, and a 7th. That 4th came in race 2 at Phillip Island, which was really good because he was under pressure. To be fair, Broomfield kind of was the floodgate. I think if Broomfield hadn't been there, a couple of others perhaps would have been able to catch up to him, but he did get 4th place there. And then a 7th place in race 1 at Lamont, and a 12th place at race 2 as well. A comfortable amateur leader at the moment, despite the first couple of rounds not going his way. He's built himself a bit of a comfortable lead now. He's 42 points with the drop scores ahead of Kevin Kittelman. But no, Stevens has improved quite a bit. So it's interesting that he's almost been able to he's really caught up in relative to his EvoSR teammates, I'd say. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a team thing how they've moved, but I think it's quite an individual thing for Stevens, because he's been able, I think last season he was behind a couple of his teammates, such as Aaron Powell. But I think now you can kind of say that they're on par with one another. Arguably, Stevens even has the edge. So been a really good season so far for him.
Yeah, Stevens has definitely taken, similar to Bob Humphrey, he's taken that next step. They are both looking better than they did last season. But they still look like they can improve more, which is great to see. There's nothing worse than seeing a driver who's made a step forward and then you can't see anything further than that. You kind of think, oh, well, that's all they've got. But no, all three of them, with Matty Chambers as well, they all look like they are trying to do better every time they go out on track. You know for sure that regardless of what's going on in a race, there'll always be one, if not two of them, banging on that door to get into the top 10, maybe even into the top 5 if things have gone their way. I think they can go strength to strength, and I'm really interested to see how much more they can progress as we go towards the end of the season. I think between those three, I think that we could possibly see another race win from them.
yeah, I think that's a good shout for the rest of the season with those guys. Also going to talk about the B team and the C team because they're kind of relatives of EvoSR. Only 2 drivers in each of these teams, Kev Copeland and Joseph Saul in the B team. At the moment, who is ahead? I think it's Saul who's ahead of Copeland currently because they're both amateur drivers. In fact, actually, Copeland getting ahead of Saul in recent rounds. Copeland actually 3rd place out of the B team drivers. Shame for Saul because he was leading the championship after round 2 at Barcelona. But then he got a penalty at, I can't remember where he got a penalty at, to be honest. I'll look it up in a second. But he got a 40-point penalty and a pit lane start actually for Lamont. So it would have been after Phillip Island that they got. Oh, I remember as well. Yeah, I remember that one now. So that's kind of a derailed championship. Otherwise, he would be in 2nd place at the moment with Saul in the championship. But if anyone's going to catch up to Stevens, perhaps Saul's got the best chance because those first couple of rounds for Saul were extremely consistent for him, and he's been consistent on the most part anyway. He's actually finished every race so far this season in the top 24, but lacking a top 12 at the moment so far this season. Apart from that penalty, it's almost been a great demonstration of what you can do with Saul's pace, and if he can just improve on these race ones a bit more, he could get within those reverse grids, and all of a sudden that's going to really improve his chances at some strong results. I think because in these race ones, I think he's only got within the reverse grid once, and that can be the make or break of whether or not you get a good race 2 result.
I was just looking at that, and I was thinking the exact same thing for both Saul and for Copeland. They're just not quite quick enough in the race one to make the race meeting really valuable and gain the points. I think that's where they're falling short. And I don't want to be mean in any way, but I kind of, for me, that's a little bit disappointing from them. I kind of expected them both to do a little bit better, maybe push for those top 15s in race 1 a little bit more regularly than what they have done, given how well they drove last season. I kind of expected them to take that step, like we were just saying for the EvoSR green guys, to take that next step, and I'm a little bit disappointed that we haven't seen them in, like I say, in the top 15 for race 1 more often. But in race 2s, they're doing brilliantly. They are sticking around, fighting for everything, and bringing home some decent points. So yeah, again, it's a little bit disappointing, but I've got high hopes that once they can find just that, it might even just be a 10th here and there, which is certainly they are more than capable of doing. Maybe it will just be like a snowball thing. They'll get one and it will keep going until the end of the season. But I really hope for both of them that they can sort out their race 1 pace and get involved in the reverse.
Need some larger reverse grids, I think. Andrew Woodhouse and Alex Simpson need to get onto that one, spin the wheel a little bit better, because if we can get some minuses in there, then they'll certainly have their chances boosted. So hopefully, good luck to those guys for getting within those reverse grids, because they could be very dangerous in the race 2s. C team being represented by John Tressida and Ryan Jones. Both have so far taken part in. Jones missed round 2, I think.
Round 3, he missed at
Round
Phillip Island.
3, apologies. You're absolutely right. Jones currently in 16. No, that's Craig Jones. Apologies. There's too many Jones. Too common a name. Ryan Jones in 13th place in the amateurs.
Yep.
36, I assume you mean.
Yeah.
In the overall with 42 points at the moment. Chester's teammates in 10th place. I guess they're kind of the same. Get a lucky race 1 and all of a sudden you could be in a nice points haul because your chance of a top 10 in race 2 are really bolstered. And it's quite a steep point system that we use in this series, which I don't think is very flattering to the C team guys, to be honest, because we have 60 points for the race win, then 52 for second place. And I think once you get down to about 12th, you actually only get 30 points. And you compare that to BSR, for example, where the winner will get about 100 points, and then 12th place will probably get like 80. So it's only like a 20-point difference. Whereas the equivalent in this series will probably be about 50. So it's quite a steep drop. Hence why they're a little bit further down, despite their decent consistency so far this season. Just not quite yielding as many points. Just to be fair, with a 13th and 19th and an 18th quite recently. Ryan Jones with a few non-scores, to be fair. But yeah, Tressida seems to be on a slightly upwards trajectory. Just looking at these results, a few outside of the top 30 in the first couple of meetings, but a 13th in race 1 at Phillip Island. I've forgotten that one, to be honest. I don't remember that one too much, but that was a very good result from Tressida, if that was the case. But then seemingly got involved in something in race 2.
It seems that way. It looks like they both started the season pretty slowly. They didn't get themselves up to pace until Phillip Island, in Tressida's case, and since then, a 13th, a no score, and then a 19th and an 18th. So definitely making gains over the start of the season. So that's good to see. Let's hope that he can continue that on. And Jones, a little bit of a mixed bag, really. Again, I think this is his debut season, so maybe still finding his feet a little, trying to figure out what's what. And like we said before, the reverse grid wheel can make or break your evening when you're down sort of in the battling for 20th place, when you're 15th and downwards, getting an extra place or two can really make a difference to your race too, and in itself that can bring so many more points. So definitely work to do for both of them, but they're both getting closer to it, and all it takes is one reverse and you're right back in it with a good result. So pretty solid to start with, but more to come, I would imagine, from this too.
Yeah, definitely look out for those guys later on in the season. So 6th place in the championship at the moment is a team who actually had a name change earlier on in the season, because they were called H2M Engineering before. At least that's what was written. So that's how we pronounced it. But they changed their name to H2M Engineering instead. Despite the name change, it hasn't cost them too much. Their drivers for this season, Daniel Lee and Dean Powell, only the two of them, which has weakened them slightly. I think if they had 3 guys, they'd probably be even further up in the championship, probably fighting for that quite coveted 3rd place in the championship, almost best of the rest in the championship, or they still have a chance themselves. Lee has been one of the most entertaining drivers so far this season. I think we've gone through a few of these. We've gone through quite a few of these teams so far today, Adam, and you kind of look through them and you look at the individual drivers and you think we haven't really seen them that much necessarily on screen. We have seen a lot, though, of Daniel Lee. He's managed to get 3 podiums so far this season, along with 3 other 9th place finishes. Also had a bit of a poor Silverstone round of the championship. But he's certainly been in the wars so far this championship. Certainly could have scored more points. I think there's been a bit on the table. I think his racecraft has been a bit questionable. I'd say his race 2 pace has been a massive improvement. Of course, at the start of the season, we nicknamed him the really funny and making sense name of Daniel Truly, which is hilarious. But it's actually been his race 2 pace, which has really really done very well so far this season. So Barcelona, he was fighting for the win in that one, and then Phillip Island, 2nd place. Only being beaten by Humphrey after getting held up in the early stages. And then Lamont, he started pretty far down in race 2, but still got up into 9th place. So it's been a weird season for Lee, and it's difficult to predict what's going to happen next time.
When I sit down at my PC on a Sunday evening, get my notepad out, get everything all set up, ready to co-commentate with you, Sam, I look at the drivers on track in the practice, and I think, right, who can I focus on for driving tonight? Who am I looking out for? And I look through all the drivers and think, how about what their race is going to be like? When I look at Daniel Lee, I think, what adventures are we going to have tonight? Because it's not just a race when he's involved. It is an adventure. It's got highs, it's got lows, it's got controversy, it's got brilliant pace. It's usually got a great interview afterwards. He is one of the characters that makes the league what it is. Sure, he's had some issues. I think back to Barcelona where he was fighting for the lead and took out Bob Humphrey for the lead because he was, as he said after the race, he was so concerned with McMahon coming up behind him. He made a move that he shouldn't have done, and cost both him and Humphrey quite a lot of places and time. But let's be honest. He's incredibly quick. He's improving all of the time. When we look back to last season, we were guaranteed that he would have an okay qualifying and then screw it up somewhere along the way in the first lap, because that's what he did. This season, it's not been so much of that. I remember actually we said it, didn't we, in commentary, whether we're going to see the Daniel Lee of old. Well, it's not even accident prone, is it? It's he has Grosjean moments, I think I said at the time.
Yeah.
And fortunately, they are becoming fewer and fewer, which is great. It means that he's getting better results. It means the drivers around him are a little bit safer. And he's progressing. And his pace is unquestionable. But it's great to see that he's getting rid of those little incidents, those little issues, because I know I joke about it, but I'm sure it wasn't a joke for the drivers that have been caught up in his shenanigans so far. I don't want to say any more because it sounds like I'm kind of hounding him a little bit, but it's all meant in jest. It's great to watch him, and it's fun. I think it's always, when we go to him on screen, it's always going to be fun, isn't it?
It certainly is. The way that you were describing it earlier on very much reminded me of a Shakespeare play, the tragedy and sometimes the high moments. So maybe something a bit like King Lear, yeah.
Oh God.
King Lear sounds like Daniel Lee. 4 more rounds, guys. 4 more rounds. So he's 7th in the championship with that pretty bad Silverstone round as well. He's going to be a bit higher as well. I mean, he's 100 points off the lead when you can take into account job scores, but he's only about 15 points off 3rd place with the job scores. That battle for 3rd place between Edwards, Wolf, Humphrey, Salt, Lee, Broomfield. Yeah, Broomfield's in there. Broomfield's. I can't get my head around how Broomfield scored so many points, but he is actually doing pretty well. No matter how harsh we are on Stephen. That's going to be a properly good battle amongst those guys. Maybe even James Holman as well will get involved in that one. Daniel Lee's teammate for this season is Dean Powell, of course. Powell's actually done. That was sorry, Dean. Sorry.
I was. You said it earlier. I was going to help you out, but it was more fun just listening to you struggle to see who it was. I'm sorry.
Thanks for that. Honestly, double the puns now for the end of the season. Due to that. So Dean Powell, we've spoken a couple of times how Dean Powell's been racing a bit more. What was that?
What was
Sound like
what?
something snapped.
Oh, no. Sorry, I'm clipping my fingernails while I'm talking to you.
Oh, okay, that's lovely to think about. I was gonna say how Dean Powell been racing against Aaron Powell a little bit more. Dean has improved quite a bit. Actually, those results there's some nice results. So it's just nice to look at the colours. 23rd, 22nd, 28th, 26th, 24th, 16th, 18th, 13th. So that is improvement if you've ever seen it. If that was a graph, that would be a linear line, I'm sure. Because no, that is a good improvement so far for Dean Powell. Surprisingly, he's still down in 24th place to be fair, but that's the point system for you, I guess. You don't get a whole lot of points for those results outside the top 15, unfortunately. So not very flattering to Dean, but any other championship, I think he'd be much higher up like I said, in a BSR or AOLTC championship or a BSR championship. I think he'd be probably up in the top 15 with that level of consistency so far this season for him. But he's had some good racing actually. Silverstone he had a good race against Aaron Powell, I think. Lamont he was there or thereabouts as well, I believe was Dean Powell. I think there's a really good meeting waiting in him, and once again, as we kind of move down these um, teams in the championship, kind of becomes more eye-opening how important it is to get those top 15s, top 20s in the race once, just so that you're within the reverse grid for race 2, because that's often the difference between the high points and some lower points. So he just needs that little extra, does Powell, and he's going to be right there fighting for top 10s much more regularly.
He's certainly consistent. Like the results, they're not very flattering for him at all. But we know that he's better than that, and his performances don't reflect it. Again, on the spreadsheet, what he's been doing doesn't reflect how well he's been driving. It's good to see that there's progression, as you said. The words are just not coming into. I ruined myself with that whole Shakespearean thing. I'm out of words now.
Oh, yes, good. Really.
The improvement that he's been showing has been brilliant. You know, it's unquestionable that he is one of the drivers who has improved the most over the course of the season. The data and the numbers show that. But again, it's another of those drivers who's right on that bubble of getting a reverse and not getting it. And as you said, and as we alluded to before, it can make all the difference to your race night. And he's just fractions, millimeters away from being involved in that race to where he can hunt down the bigger points. Again, I have high hopes for him for the second half of the season. I really hope we keep seeing this same trajectory of improvement from him, because if we can, he's going to be showing some real support for Daniel Lee, and maybe, you know, as the team, they can start putting their sights forward. Even though there's two of them, they can really start kind of clinching some team positions too.
There's about 100-point gap to third place in the championship, but I wouldn't rule them out from getting that third place. Powell, just needs to start scoring a bit higher, and with what Lee's already doing, they could be able to close that gap, but certainly sixth place in the championship, looking very good for them at the moment. One of the last teams we're going to talk about is Satellite Racing. A very different Satellite Racing to last season. You had the dream team of Karoni, Andre, and Anja last season, which pretty much because of admin didn't win the team's championship last season. Basically, they applied many different drivers for the championship, and I asked, you know, he's actually you need to divide up the teams, and they never got back to me on that front. So hence why they weren't in the team's championship last season. However, they were extremely strong. They won all but 4 of the meetings, and all the meetings in the first half of the season last season did. So that's like racing. None of those 3 around this season. And still Nick Rowland around. So you got the red team of Rowland and Euler, and then you've also got the blue team of Pataska, Nichols, and Warren. all these drivers, particularly Roland, Euler, and Pataska, they are quick drivers. There's no doubting that, Adam. And it's just been a little bit of a shame that they haven't quite been able to realize their full potential. They have had a few other races going on. They had an R-Factor endurance championship, I believe, which meant that they all missed Phillip Island, and unfortunately, Roland, Euler, and Pataska couldn't do Lamont. But I mean, for me, I just want to see what Nick Roland can do, because at the start of the season, I really counted him in as a championship contender. This is a driver who got podiums last season. And I think if he applies next season, well, once again, he'll be a championship contender. I mean, they're just they're a team which can achieve so much more. Euler as well on his debut was leading at Silverstone race 2. I believe before a couple of instant. Pataska was very impressive on that round of the championship. If they commit to the second half of the season, they're going to be a lot of fun to drive and a lot of fun to watch, and a team who are. It's only a matter of time till they get another race win.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything that you've just said there. The issue that they're having is their commitment to the league. They, as you said, they've got other commitments that they have given priority over. Satellite Racing, of course, is a massive racing organisation, so they've got a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, and their drivers. You have to be of a certain standard to be able to wear the satellite colours. And when the drivers have been on track in this league, they've generally shown pretty well, and they have raced just as hard as anybody. Sure, they're not the same standard as the team that we saw last season, but let's be honest, to have another team with 3 drivers as good as Andre Andra and Caroni, I doubt we'll see that again. So they're when they do race, they drive well, they drive hard. I hope that the next 4 meetings we're going to see more of them. But at the same time, I'm liking the battles that we've already got at the front. I would imagine that when these guys do actually get back into racing, they'll be there racing as well. And whether or not it's too late for them to make a real charge for any real meaningful points, or whether they're going to start taking points off of the guys that are already battling. I suppose that's just a purist me coming out, but we'll see. Either way, I would like to see them back, and I would like to see them battling week in, week out for an entire season again, because it was brilliant last year.
They're all still parts of the series, which is good. I did ask Nick whether any of them we're going to have to drop out, but they're all still signed up for the championship for the final 4 rounds of the season, which does give us optimism that they are going to be able to turn up for the remaining rounds, and they will certainly be a lot of danger as long as they do turn up. But hopefully we'll be able to talk a bit more about them at the end of the season when they've got some bit better results under their belts. Last couple of teams then. Douglas Motorsports and Scc Racing. We'll first talk about Douglas Motorsports. Adrian Campfield, unfortunately, I think has had to pull out of the series after a couple of decent results for Campfield. Not sure if I put him as an amateur to start off with. That was all based on iRacing. But Campfield did all right at the start of the season. Just trying to find where his results were. I keep on coming across it. There you go. Well, you got 26th and a no score in Silverstone, but then a 17th and then 8th at Barcelona. That Barcelona round was extremely competitive as well. That Campfield raced in. Wayne Douglas as well started off the season quite strongly. Unfortunately, it's just been a bit affected by some penalties that Douglas has accumulated. I wouldn't say Douglas is, more instant thing than many of the other drivers, but often drivers don't report incidents. Unfortunately for Wayne, seems like all of his incidents have been reported, which have just whittled his championship points down. So despite a 6th place in race 2 at Silverstone and finishing in the top 20 in pretty much every round, and then only finishing outside the top 20 in 2 rounds scoring points at every single race. He's currently down in 25th place of the championship, behind the likes of Dean Powell, despite finishing ahead of Powell in all but a couple of races so far this season. Hopefully we'll see Douglas perform slightly better in the main rounds. Just looking at his results, he's another guy actually who's struggled to get within the reverse grids so far this season. So I think he did get within the first grid at Silverstone, only just though. But then I think he missed out at Barcelona, Phillip Island, and Lamont pretty marginally in each of them. And he got taken out as well at Le Mans as well, actually, through an incident. So certainly a what could have been season for Wayne, but it's still nice to have him in the championship. And I'm sure there's probably a podium up his sleeve, I think, at some point. He's got that pace, but these last few rounds for him, ever since Silverstone, have been really quite frustrating.
He's another one of those that suffers with the millimeters, the smallest of margins to get that reverse. His general pace is not bad. It's not bad at all. Very competitive. But again, yeah, just falls slightly short of being able to get himself a decent reverse to really put him at the sharp end for a race two. Where you're absolutely right. I think we could see a podium from him if it plays to his favour and he gets himself into a reverse situation. I don't think he's got the pace outright to do it in a race one, but certainly from what we've seen, definitely a race two podium is on the cards if he can get himself in that position. I do feel he took a little bit of time to understand how the league is kind of raced. When I was explaining to Mike Horder about the standards here, it's very much on the most part the drivers will give you room, but they'll give you just enough room. They won't give you more than you deserve, but they'll make sure that you have enough to put your car. If you're alongside, they will squeeze, they will race you hard, but on the most part they will know when to concede, and they'll know when to attack you again. I just think it took a little bit of time for Wayne to understand that mentality and how it's not like a gentleman's league per se. It's raced a whole lot harder than that, but it's raced in a very fair and competitive way. But I think he's getting to grips with that, and I think that's only going to be a good thing for him. And hopefully second half of the season he can cut down on those penalties and seek out that podium that we both think he can get.
Certainly. And the last team we'll talk about is Scc Racing, with Craig Jones and Andre McCullen at the wheel in that team. Not sure if they took part at Phillip Island, actually. Did they take part in Phillip Island?
I think Craig
they did. They just didn't score points, unfortunately. I had a little bit of a struggling round there. But McCullen has struggled a little bit. He's been a little bit off the pace so far this season, but credit to him. 23rd and 25th at Le Mans was his best results so far this championship, and it's quite a deep end to go diving into is this championship, because everyone is so competitive. I think in other leagues you have a bit more of a range, I'd say, of drivers between newbies and more experienced drivers. So in the most part, I don't know if it's just because it's the fact that it's a GTE league or what, but I'd say that there's a lot more kind of experienced drivers in this championship in terms of their experience on iRacing. And yeah, McCullen just being left behind a little bit at the moment, but like I said, on the most part, getting in the race results, which is really at the moment the most that he can do.
I think you're right with that statement about the league. Most leagues, you have a very distinct front group, midfield, and then rear drivers, or stragglers, as someone once called them. But in this league, you have the front runners, and then a very blurred line and then the midfield, and then there is no group after that. Anyone in the midfield can get themselves podiums in a race 2. Some of them can get themselves podiums in a race 1 if things go their way. And that goes right from the very front of them all the way down to the very rear of them. So yeah, it is a rude awakening for drivers when they first come here, and you can certainly see that from McCullen's scores. I think he. I don't want to assume to know him, but it looks like he was a little bit overwhelmed with the pace of the guys around, and he just couldn't quite get to grip with it. However, Lamont come round, and a track that we know is very draft heavy, and it can keep you a whole lot closer to the cars in front that you might not generally be able to keep up with in a normal track. And he's grabbed himself a 23rd and a 25th. They're great results. They are really, really good results. And I think, no discredit to him, but the draft has helped him there. Now he knows what it takes to be in and around racing those guys. Hopefully, the next 4 meetings, he can then push on that little bit further and try to wrestle his way kind of through that midfield pack. High hopes for him, but it is a tough task. And the same with Craig Jones. We saw him last season, didn't we? Was in a similar kind of situation where tracks that he was particularly good at, he would run well, but the rest of it was a little bit of a struggle for him. This season he's showing a lot better. Highest finishing position of a 17th, which is great, and that was in a race 1 as well. So a very good effort from him. So yeah, like McCullen, hopefully they can really take the league by the scruff of the neck in these next four rounds and bring in some decent points.
Yeah, it would be good to see them lift themselves from the bottom of the championship at the moment. Currently scoring 60 points. I think they should be able to break the 200-point barrier, I reckon, from now to the end of the season, and we'll hope they catch up to the likes of Scc Racing, Red, and Douglas Motorsports and C Team. See if they can catch up there. So we've gone through all the teams. Still a couple of drivers I'd just like to have a little bit of a chat about, who unfortunately are privateers. So unfortunately they're not scoring any points in the team's championship. I think the most notable, just going through the standings at the moment, Nick Madsen, who scored a 2nd place at Barcelona race 1. Of course, the fact there was a race 1 means that it was a properly legit 2nd place as well, only being beaten by Tom McMahon. And of course, you've raced against Madsen. We chatted about, I think, back at Barcelona. You mentioned how he was quite an aggressive driver. And he could be a championship contender. I would put him on par with the likes of Wolf, Humphrey, Lee, Broomfield. I think he's equal pace, arguably even better than those guys. But just struggling to get in the results so far. And I think at Silverstone in particular, I don't think that was necessarily his fault. I know he got involved in an incident with Daniel Lee for certain in that round. But very much could have scored a lot more points this season. And another guy who it's only a matter of time till he wins a race.
Well, of course, he had an incident at Lamont as well before the start-finish line.
Of course, he qualified 3rd.
No, I think he was 2nd, I think, but didn't Edwards put it on pole, and Madsen was 2nd, I think. And then
McMahon was on pole.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, so he would have been 3rd then.
Yeah.
So my short-term memory is useless. But yeah, so he has had some incidents, and I still stand by the statement I made previously that he is an aggressive driver. I feel that sometimes he knows he's quick, and I think sometimes he rushes to get things done, to get a move done, to get to try and build a gap or to try and close a gap, and it in doing so it invites problems and it invites incidents. I was when we first commentated on him, I was trying to think to myself, who would I relate him to in the real world so people can get an understanding of where I'm coming from. And the only person that I could think of, and the person I kept coming back to, was Verstappen when he first went to Red Bull. Remember he had he obviously won his first race, but then he went through a bit of a period, didn't he, where it was a bit messy. There are incidents that were being had where he was just so eager to get the job done and to bring the points home that he was having incidents and issues that he's now solved, and he's now an amazing driver. But it was a very steep learning curve, and I think Madsen is in that kind of, in my mind, in that kind of bubble where he knows he's quick. Everyone knows he's quick, but he's just trying that little bit too hard to show it and to prove it.
Yeah, that could be the case. If there's any silver lining, I think, to Madsen's season so far, is it does take the pressure off. He's on 107 points when drop scores are taken into account. I think he has got a few penalty points so far this season. So he's not in the championship, no chance of the championship. He's not even in the team's championship. So he just wants to get probably some nice results from now to the end of the season. And if he can do that, then that'll be not too bad season for him. Hopefully we'll see him back as well for next season. I think one more privateer that we'll talk about, and it's a man that you're quite familiar with, Adam, Mike Horder. He was being an absolute disgrace to his team. I mean, absolutely terrible. Although I would say the other team members that I know from that team are pretty poor themselves, to be fair. So probably reflecting that. But no, Mike, he was good at. I'm just trying to remember the first couple of rounds of the season. It feels so long ago now, but I swear he was doing much better than a 16th, a 23rd, a 26th, and a 12th back in Silverstone and Barcelona. But apparently that's where he finished. And then Phillip Island, he didn't manage to make that round. And then finally, Le Mans, he actually got some better results, and despite having a car which seemed to be completely unraceable out there. So you probably chatted to Mike about his experience so far in Aerial GT. What's his reflection been on it so far?
On the most part, he's enjoyed it. He's one of the lonely Ford drivers, so that in itself makes it a million times harder, because for some reason the Ford has just gone backwards. But no, on the most part, he's enjoyed it. I think his results aren't entirely reflective of how well he's been driving, all things considered. He did find it a little bit tough the first couple of rounds to get a grip on the car and to really be competitive. And yeah, Phillip Island, he wasn't able to be here, but then Le Mans, it was kind of weird, wasn't it? We were saying how the wing looked massive, and he just had no straight line speed. I was talking to him during that race, and he said no, the wing is set, as low as it can go. The set felt all right. What was interesting was that afterwards we was talking, and he said that he thought that in the first race, when he committed the set to start the race, it didn't actually commit it properly. So he was running some other set, because when he loaded the set for race 2, which is essentially the identical set, he felt the car was running a whole lot better, and was a whole lot more competitive in a straight line. It was still slow in a straight line, but it was more competitive, which helped him. But interestingly, even with the wrong set on, he still managed to 5th in race 1 and finish lower down in 6th in race 2. So I'm not sure how much difference it made, but no, considering he's in the Ford, he's not doing a bad job. And I'm going to say all of that without any kind of influence of any type of team affiliations or anything like that. Yeah, definitely my driver of the season so far.
Well, there you go. Go get a job as a judge or something, because you're totally impartial. Honestly, I'd like you at my murder trial. I forgot to mention James Holman, which is another privateer. Holman, who unfortunately didn't do Le Mans. He's actually had a 7th and 8th, a 6th and 8th, and a 6th, and a 21st. He's been pretty good so far this season, so look forward to seeing more of Holman. Could have he's kind of in that battle for best of the rest, that third place in the championship. So good luck to him for the rest of the season. 4 more rounds of the championship to go, Adam. We've got Watkins Glen, Spa, Okayama, and Suzuka. Any of those rounds which really stand out to you as could be, really good rounds, or could be chaotic, or maybe could be important for the championship, and any of those which stand out?
I think Watkins and Spa will be great because they're both still drafty tracks, which means that the pack should stay closer together. Sorry, just on Holman, by the way, I expect him to get a podium before the end of the season.
Good shout.
Well, not expect. I would think he would get a podium before the end of the season. But yeah, Watkins and Spa, still drafty tracks, so I think the pack will be a whole lot closer. We could get a few mixed up results in that. But then Okayama and Suzuka, they're both pretty technical, and usually the better, I don't want to use the word ability, but the drivers who can understand the flow of a track better will usually rise to the top in that. So I think it'll be back to what we've been seeing in the early part of the season, the usual pecking order for those couple of tracks. But again, they are very technical, and overtaking in them is not as easy as you would think in either of those tracks. So we might have a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons, but I would assume that it'll be back to what we're used to.
Should be a good race too at Okayama in particular, with that difficult to overtake, as you say, down at the hairpin on that cycle, which is the main overtaking chance. Could see some big lunges, I imagine, which could make or break the race for some drivers. I'm looking for. I mean, it's a brilliant schedule. Whoever came up with it was a genius. I'm looking forward to Suzuka the most. I think there's going to be a twist right at the end of the championship, which could be some big changes. We're halfway through the season, and I'm going to give you this opportunity, Adam, to predict the top 3 in both the teams and the drivers' championship, because I think it's pretty certain. It's not certain, but I think it's kind of obvious. I'd say you got an obvious answer for the top 2 in each of those championships, but then third place as well is extremely competitive. So who are you going to be your top 3 drivers in 4 rounds time?
Drop the top 3 drivers. It's hard to see past McMahon at this point, so I would have to play the safe bet and say McMahon to win. And then, it's a tough one. I would possibly say Bisa and Wolf.
Sorry, who in third?
Wolf, yeah.
Okay.
But I could see that would either be Edwards or Wolf, and I think the last round might decide that one.
Okay. Who are going to be your top 3 in the AMS?
In the AMS, Stevens is looking good with that, so it's hard to see past him. Kitterman is doing a blinding job. You know what? I'm going to go Stevens, Kitterman, and Adrianson.
Good shout. And your teams?
Oh, the teams. This is probably the hardest one. I'm gonna go with Gold Racing Team Porsche, because I think they've got the better consistency throughout the team. So even if one of the drivers isn't doing particularly well, the other one's there to pick up the pieces. So I think they're going to win it. EvoSR with McMahon driving them forward in second, and then Gold Racing Team BMW. I don't see any surprises in the top 3 there. I think it's pretty much as we are now. We'll see that to the end of the season.
Okay, so I'm not one for conventional logic. I always back the wild cards that tennis Grand Slams. I always say that Federer's going to win, even though I gave up hope many years ago. So I will go for the Pro Championship. I will go for James Salt to win the championship. You realise if I get this right, I mean, well, corruption, I think will be the first first thing people will go
That's
to.
a big call. Wow.
So I'll go Salt top, McMahon in second, and Vysokopska in third. I reckon the three of them are going to be separated by like 10 points. I think McMahon and Vysokopska will like come together or something, and Salt will very quietly under the radar move into the lead of the championship. In the amateurs, I set the amateur rating, so I can't really be obvious on this one. I will go for it's looking so good for Stevens, to be honest, right now. I'll go Saul actually. Saul was really good in the first couple of rounds of the championship. I'll go for him to pull off an insane comeback. He's only got half the points of Stevens at the moment, but Saul will win the championship. Stevens in second place and Copeland in third. And then in the teams, I can't go for a wild card here. I will just go for. Well, you went for Gold Racing Team Porsche, so I'll go for EvoSR to win. Gold Racing Team Porsche in second. And third place, EvoSR Green in third position. I'm quite happy with those picks. Let us know what your picks are. You can let us know in the Discord or in the comments for this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully we'll do a few more of these for other championships and certainly in the future for the Apex Racing League GT Championship. Certainly do check out the other stuff that we post on YouTube regarding championships. We're doing these weekly race highlight race highlight videos, and also we have the race review posted by Andrew Woodhouse, who broadcasts the series most weeks, and that'll be on the ApexRacingLeague.com website. So certainly do click on that, and you can have a quick read through the race write-up, which is always pretty cool. We like doing this extra stuff for the series, and hopefully we'll see you back for the final 4 rounds of the championship. Certainly do subscribe to Apex Racing TV. That's the best way to keep up with it, or you can watch on the Esports Network, to be fair, as well for that. But I've been Sam Fitzpatrick, and alongside me has been Adam Hedgecock. Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast, and we'll see you back very soon.